Welcome back, everyone, to the latest episode of the Unclassified Podcast. And I'm not going to say it. Okay, I'll say it. We're so back. We're so back. Before this episode kick-started, we took a poll on YouTube and we said, are we so back? Are we never back? Or does Ben always jinx it? And overwhelmingly, like 70% to 15 and 15%, people said I jinx it. And I don't believe in that kind. I'm not very superstitious. Maybe I'm like a little suspicious, but nothing more than that. And so I don't think I'm going to jinx it. In fact, I think we're so back. President Trump is giving weapons to Ukraine, big weapons, perhaps the best weapons. And we're stoked about that, aren't we, Preston?
I like how you said I'm not going to jinx it. Just like you're just assuming that that's not a thing. Like you're not going to do anything different. You're just kind of saying it out loud that it's not going to be the case this time.
I think if you say you're not going to jinx it and then you say the thing, it kind of,
I don't really think on wood.
Yeah,
there's a jinx to be had here. There's a jinx to be had here, and we'll get into it with the Ukraine stuff. But there's a lot of wiggle room still on this, so there's a good chance you messed this up already. But
look,
great start.
Jinxing is for people who don't have a pure heart, but I have a pure heart, pure soul. I have a whimsy to me, and I don't jinx things. Anyways, speaking of things we don't want to jinx, though, Preston, you're about to be the king of Nashville? What's happening here? You're in the Final Four? I mean, enlighten us.
Yeah, I'm not great about responding to emails. I have a publicly facing email and get a lot of really awesome notes in there, and I try my best. And sometimes I just don't. And in the category of I just didn't was a nice gentleman from the Tennessean that said we're writing some profiles on like social media creators in the Nashville area. I thought, and I don't have a reason why I didn't respond. I just didn't. I don't know. I was doing something else. I think this was right in the middle of the whole, Iran stuff. I'll use that as an excuse. Nonetheless, a couple weeks ago, I got tagged that I was in the top 16 voting category and immediately became like hyper competitive. Obviously, like I did not know about this 3 weeks ago, and now if I don't win, my life probably won't feel complete. To be totally honest, I'm up against some powerhouses. There's a dog. I think there's a former Olympic athlete and a family, I believe. I don't know. You can look it up, Ben. Yeah,
I'm looking this up right now.
It's a mixed bag. It's an honor to be a part of it, but also I feel very I feel out of my element. Feel out of my element being called an influencer at baseline, but then kind of having this strong tie to Nashville as though like a bunch of people in Nashville know me or would recognize me. I don't think that's the case at all.
All right, so I have it here. You have Doug the Pug, which is, quote, a famous dog. Yeah, dogs don't live long, so you might outlive this. Hannah Brown is New York Times bestselling author and former bachelorette. And the other one is Shawn Johnson, former Olympic gymnast.
Preston Stewart, co-host of Unclassified Podcast. You see, he just slides in there so smoothly compared to the others.
No one cares about Shawn Johnson. She hasn't won a gold medal in God knows how many. Did she even win a gold medal? Who knows? Embarrassing us out there if she didn't win one. Doug the Pug, it's a dog. If you lose to a dog, this podcast is over. And the Bachelorette, you're going to lose to a come on. You're going to win. You're going to win. The question is, when you win, what do you get?
I don't know.
Do you get
probably like unlimited hot chicken? Unlimited hot chicken at Hattie B's. I don't know if you've ever had that, but that'd be worth it.
No. Are you going to open up a bar in the Nashville Strip? Preston Stewart's Bar and Grill and Ammunition Depot.
Yeah, you got it.
There you go.
You're on it.
Well,
yeah. Head down. I got to focus on this contest. Yeah.
Yeah, folks, go vote for him. If we lose, you'll never hear from us ever again. And if I guess you lose. But
you're in on this, huh? All right.
I'm backing. I'm endorsing. We can't lose to a dog or a gymnast. Well, come on.
Thank you for your attention to this matter.
And speaking of important things, before we get too deep into it, have you seen the Superman controversy?
I have not. No, this sounds rather pop culture-y, so loop me in.
No. Yeah, so Superman, I don't know if you know him, a superhero. He's out with a new movie, And well, not he, like there's an actor playing him because he's not real, but
okay.
yeah. Anyway, so he's out with a new movie, and the director James Gunn said, well, Superman is an immigrant, which is true. He is from another planet, right? His family sent him from his planet to Earth because he was in imminent danger. The only way it could be more about like a refugee or an immigrant if his name was Carlos. And so he, people, Fox News is very upset about this, saying he's making the movie woke. And I don't know. I feel like I've like watched some Superman shows before, and I feel like it's like a common theme in all of them. It's that he's like not from here, so he has to like get assimilated, and he's like has to hide. He literally has to hide being Superman because he's like Clark Kent half the day, Anyways, people are really upset about this. I don't know. I think that's how you know the unemployment rate's maybe pretty high, because I keep seeing it all over my feed, and I think, well, seems like people need a job here.
Or we just don't have real problems. If that's genuinely concerned, like I can't tell. Are we supposed to be upset that Superman, however long ago, 50 years ago, that was dreamed up, that they didn't have him born in the United States? Like, doesn't it defeat the story? What is the upset thing here? I don't understand. I'm upset that people are upset.
People are upset that James Gunn said that he's an immigrant, which I don't know what he is. An alien, right? He's from another planet.
Maybe
he was.
Should we call him an illegal alien instead of an immigrant?
Yeah, he came as like a baby, and he was raised in Canada. I'm so confused why people are upset. It's like people don't like. Do you think he was just born in America? I don't know. Anyways, who cares? But you know what people do care about? Ukraine, especially President Trump, who our dear Donald has delivered. Maybe? What's happening here, Preston? Give us the 411.
This saga, I am pretty convinced at this point. I think the best way to put it is there's a lack of coordination inside the administration. I think if you say it that way, it's pretty all-encompassing, and it allows for just overt mistakes. And about a week ago, we started to see news that the U.S. had paused aid to Ukraine. And the response is coming from the White House and the DOD and the State Department and Ukraine and our allies and General Kellogg. They were all different. They all gave different explanations and rationales, and some were calling it fake. Others were saying, no, this is the right move for America. Like, the fact that everybody's explanation was different just gives me the impression that clearly this was not well coordinated. Yeah. That kind of slowly transformed into more and more stories that I put some credibility behind, that Secretary Hegseth unilaterally made this decision, or at least he's the one that signed off on it without maybe coordinating with state and White House and anyone else. That sounds about right, just if you follow the statements. It looks like nobody knew what was happening. Like, State Department was asked about this the day of. It looked like they were learning about it for the first time. President Trump has been asked about this, and he had a great response to Caitlin Collins at CNN. I don't know if you saw this one. She said, who froze the aid if it wasn't you? And Trump said, I don't know. Why don't you tell me? It's like, it's great.
Yeah.
The way that this has been treated makes it sound, again, my gut is telling me that Hegseth made this decision unilaterally. The rest of the government was trying to keep up, and it looks like President Trump was not necessarily on board, either at baseline or after some things have changed with Ukraine and Russia, and they're kind of reversing course right now. We've seen reports that the aid has, quote, turned back on. It's been unfrozen. And there's talk now that Trump might be opening up a $300 million aid package drawdown in the next couple weeks, maybe. He's hinted at something big coming on Monday. And we've got news that Germany wants to purchase a handful of Patriot systems from the United States to give to Ukraine. So it's the polar opposite of the news that came out, again, about 10 days ago, that we were freezing ongoing military aid. It went from freezing to we are, for the first time under this administration, talking about sending more.
You know, when you were saying that thing about Trump says, I don't know, you tell me, and then he announced that he will be sending more weapons, did you watch John Ratcliffe's face sitting next to Pete Hegseth? Yeah. It seemed like he kind of hooted and hollered and then let out a huge sigh of relief, and Pete Hegseth, enemy of the pod, or friend of the pod, I've kind of forgot how the friend of the pod thing works.
Soon, right? Yeah.
But he, kind of sitting there grimacing, angry. Why does he keep stopping the aid? What is it? My understanding, it seems like the entire government, each wing of it, as you said, is operating with their own foreign policy. The Treasury Department's doing whatever they want. Pete Hegseth is doing whatever he wants. It seems like the State Department just does whatever. Also, they're laying off over 1,000 workers today for whatever reason. And it just seems like there's no coordination. I'm glad to see Trump is sending it back here. I wonder what his announcement is on Monday. If I had to guess, and I'm usually right because I'm the Trump whisperer, he is going to announce that I'm sending more weapons to Ukraine, and until Vladimir Putin decides to negotiate, I'm going to keep sending more and more to force him to the negotiating table. I think that's what his announcement. I also think it'll come while he's signing his sanctions bill, which is not actually sanctions, but putting a 500% tariff on China and India. So
for anybody who's not been too deep in the weeds here, it generally looks like Trump has been kind of hoping that Putin will come around, and that hasn't happened. He has not responded. 2 days ago, we saw the largest drone and missile attack carried out by Russia since the war began. The previous high was a week prior to that. And June was the heaviest bombardment month of the entire war. So, when you look at a chart of drone and missile strikes in Ukraine day by day, week by week, or month by month, it is spiking right now. So you can't even look at, no, Putin did not just decide, okay, I'm going to stop fighting and talk to President Trump. He didn't even maintain the intensity. He has ramped it up significantly. 741 strikes in one night. The previous high was I think 530. Prior to that, it was 500, and then it's so Trump sees that, right? And there's no indication. I mean, you can't. There is, again, following this as closely as I can, looking at both Russian media, Ukrainian media, European media, and media in the United States, I can't find a single argument that Putin is trying to resolve this at the negotiating table other than a complete victory and surrender of Ukraine. Even inside of Russian media, they're not even pretending that he's trying to get to some ceasefire. They're not even propping that up. It's just, we will continue the war. We will win. We will be victorious. So I don't think it's I think it's tempting at times to get frustrated with the administration and say, why did it take this long? We could have been here on day one. I don't think that's very helpful or useful.
correct.
I think that and I think we're going to get into this with some questions later. I think it's a net benefit for the United States to assist Ukraine in their defense. So I'm glad President Trump is there now, and I hope that what we see in the next week is just the start of a continuation. There's a possibility that Trump gets competitive with this and gets pissed off that Putin isn't listening and that he doesn't have the power that he thought he did. Trump, that is. Mm-hmm. And maybe he comes off the top rope, man. I don't know. Maybe we've got F-35s patrolling the airspace in western Ukraine before too long. That's not going to happen, but yeah.
I mean, I hope he does. I hope he sticks it to Putin. It is, you're right, no one is saying that Putin wants to resolve this at all. And I think the reason the administration, I'm glad they're here, and I will praise them for it. I have today. Got nothing negative to say about our boy, the official new friend of the pod, at least for this week, President Trump. And the leader. I'm going to put a picture of him right here. Next week, as long as the aid continues to flow. And what I'm saying is that I think they deluded themselves into thinking that the issue with Putin was the issue of Putin fit into the domestic American political context, and it just never did. And I think that's what you saw with Tucker Carlson. And with President Trump, it was just because he thought he could fix it. Now, of course, on the mainstream right, that was never the belief, right? They knew the only way you can stop Putin is with force, and thankfully Trump has landed on that conclusion, and I hope we go further. The question is how much further? I mean, he's definitely riding high after he dropped all these bunker busters on Iran, and then they just, didn't do anything. They were just oh, okay, well, whatever, we're going to shoot at your base then, and that was that. And I bet he's flying high, and I wonder how far he'll take it. Like, I don't think we'll launch strikes into Russia. But, as you said, could we see F-35s? Could we see more aid? Could we see U.S. soldiers in Ukraine? Probably not. But I don't know. I think we're in a great position right now, and if Trump keeps it up, we might start referring to him by his initials, right? I mean, FDR, he's got his initials, so wartime leaders, they always have their initials.
It's probably. Did you see Rubio compared Trump to Churchill yesterday?
I did see that, and I thought, that is true. Churchill famously said, well, once we get Neville Chamberlain, this war only started because of Neville Chamberlain. Once we get him out of office, I'll fix it. So
it's Chamberlain's war. That's what everybody always talks about.
Yeah, everyone always
right?
said, this war never would have happened if I was in office, what Churchill was saying.
So I think it's worth considering what would a Trump policy look like that would be beneficial for Ukraine, and I don't think it's that hard to get there. It could be zero U.S. military involvement. We're already there, right? Trump has talked about Europe needs to take a larger role in the defense of Ukraine. Like, got it. No U.S. troops on the ground, no U.S. aircraft overhead. Maybe they're even pulling U.S. troops out of Europe, whatever it might be. I ranted about this last week. Let's discount some of our military equipment and sell it to our European allies. And we'll start manufacturing more here in the United States. Like, it's more jobs for the American workers. It's high income jobs. People producing Patriot missiles are making a fair amount of money across the board. We can stand these up in new locations. Maybe we can stand some up overseas for some tax benefits over there. We can outsource some of the technology. We're boosting the U.S. economy. We're gaining allies around the world through. That's got to be a Trump way to like allies, right? Let's increase trade by selling them more weapons. If money flows into the United States, and Europe then has additional resources to start pumping some of that aid into Ukraine. I feel like that's not the craziest thing in the world, and it would be very Trumpian to be able to promote it as not just there's jobs coming into the United States, but look at the dominance of U.S. technology over Russia. I feel like it's possible.
No, I fully agree. I will say this. If Trump does that, he'll just be doing what Biden did, right? Because that's exactly what Biden did. It'd be a continuation of U.S. foreign policy.
But make more of the weapons. Flood the zone with weapons. Why?
Oh, I fully agree.
For 3 years, it's been. We should not be doing the same thing. Now, getting back to the same thing would be an increase in weapons flow to Ukraine, no doubt, in the short term. But I'm talking about let's shoot for the moon, man. Let's a million interceptors a year churning out, just like some ridiculous number, right?
I fully agree.
Base the entire U.S. economy on Patriots.
It's interesting that Australia has sent more tanks to Ukraine than we have. We have like an entire state that's like 50% Abrams tanks. It's called Arizona, right? And they just sit there in that junkyard, or I guess not junkyard, whatever you want to call it. Why don't we just send more of those? I feel like we have so much stuff just laying around, and they're like, what if we need it for China? What are you going to do with the tanks? You going to float them next to the aircraft carrier? Yeah. I don't. We can send more, and I hope we do. I hope he floods the zone, and I hope he gives a big middle finger to Putin. And you know what? If he keeps up, he's going to get a big old statue in Kyiv. Huge statue. The angel that's on top of that thing in the Maidan Square? Mm-hmm. You know what I'm talking about? They're going to rip off the angel, and they're going to put a big golden statue of Trump there, if he can pull this off. And I hope he does, because we're all rooting for him. And truly, I mean, he would be the president that defeated Russia. Reagan couldn't do it. Clinton fell for the propaganda. He fell for that Yeltsin propaganda. Bush, what did Bush say? Oh, I looked in Putin's eyes and I saw his soul. Obama didn't really like Putin.
Reset, right? Yeah.
What'd you say?
Wasn't Obama the reset?
Yeah, they had a big button. Oh, we're going to reset with Russia. We're going to reset with Russia. They were so naive. In hindsight, I could tell them not to do that. And then you had Trump up there. I'm the only one to get along with Putin. And then Biden looks into Putin's eyes again and says, you have no soul. And now we're back to Trump. First off, what is up with American presidents looking in Putin's eyes and then that determining our foreign policy?
Mesmerizing, yeah.
I looked in his eyes and I just saw this man who invaded Georgia. He has just the most touching, kind soul. Whatever, Bush. And then Biden over here, you have no soul, which is also equally weird. So, I don't know. I just hope Trump is the guy who puts an end to the Russia problem forever. And I hope my kids never have to know of a country named Russia. Kind of like Yugoslavia.
Wow.
You know? I hope, no offense to Russians, but I hope Russia ends up like Yugoslavia, where, who do you think your kids know about Yugoslavia? Not a chance. No one knows about Yugoslavia because it doesn't exist anymore. And I hope they know about an enlarged Ukraine and a larger Belarus and then a bunch of tribal nations off in the east. See, you think that's too much? You seem pretty startled by that take.
An aggressive take, but it's fine. Let's focus on maybe increasing the weapons flow here in the short term. Maybe stabilizing the lines and protecting Ukrainian airspace. And a big one, randomly to keep an eye on, are some interceptors that Ukraine is developing domestically to shoot down these Shahed drones.
Big.
We're seeing more and more of those because they're too inexpensive for Patriots to be used against. And Russia started flying them at a high level, so they're out of small arms range. And their attack vector is now all of a sudden kind of top down. So they used to come in real low, like cruise missiles, and guys with AKs could reasonably expect to hit them. They were moving slow enough. So Russia went, cool, we're going to go higher. And now they're coming in above the range of most small arms, at least, and coming top down on the target, and they're doing a lot of damage. So Ukraine has started developing these very high-altitude interceptor drones that are pretty impressive.
Can we give Ukraine C-rams? You know what a C-ram? Am I saying that right? It's for people who don't know. If you ever see footage out of like Iraq, it's or Arma 3, they, you hear like a beep, and then all of a sudden a bzz, like a machine gun fire, and then it fires off all these red rounds into the sky in hopes of hitting drones, missiles, whatever. Can we give Ukraine that, or do they have no use for it? Is it because it's too,
It's not ideal
stationary?
For what Ukraine. Yeah, I mean, it's one of those where, like, it would work. It would be able to shoot down, especially these Shahed drones. But those are really designed. The reason you see those on U.S. bases, the reason you see those on ships at sea, is they're designed to protect a point target, like a hard point. They're protecting that one thing. One of the issues in Ukraine is that they're using these Shahed drones. This week, they hit military recruitment centers. All right, so the C-rams are relatively close-range engagements. You're not shooting something that's 15 kilometers off in one direction or the other. It's right as it's coming towards your target, your ship or your base. The targets are spread across Ukraine. They're going after energy infrastructure. Sometimes it's airports, or airstrips. Sometimes it's refueling centers. Sometimes it's rail yards. So the targets. Now, if Ukraine could have one of those C-rams, every 500 meters across the country, sure, that'd be good. But I think right now, kind of their mobile teams have been effective in a lot of these higher altitude drones.
Makes sense.
More cost effective. Yeah,
that makes sense. Do you think? I mean, I've seen talk of nets being used, not in Ukraine, but like hypothetical. Do you think
they
nets
are being
can
used
do
in
anything?
Ukraine?
Okay. Do you think they can be used en masse? Like when people say we're going to use nets, like, are we talking like putting? This is probably a dumb question. Are we talking about like building a net dome over Kyiv? Are we talking about putting nets like high in the sky, like a wall almost, or what's happening with that?
So we've seen them used a couple ways so far. Where it really started out was over dugouts and positions. There would be kind of camo netting strung out over the top. Sometimes chain link fences even. And best case, it would catch the drone, and it was soft enough to where the drone wouldn't detonate when it hit. Sometimes, however, the drone does have a manual option, so it can hit, doesn't detonate, and the operator can click a button and it still goes boom. Even then, it's offset by a distance, right? The net is not literally laying on top of the piece of equipment, so maybe it gives you an extra 2, 3, 4 meters in front of that detonation. We've seen them used more and more recently around roads, both by the Russians and the Ukrainians. I had some pictures I posted just a couple days ago showing Ukraine installing they're fishing nets by and large. Because they're these giant nets, and they kind of create like a tunnel for a section of the road, and it prevents FPV drones from hitting the vehicles on that road. Now, both sides have found ways to get around that, but call it a 90% solution. What used to just be an open stretch of vehicles getting hit left and right, now it's a lot harder to hit them. We've seen Russia, I can't tell if this is temporary or not, but on some of their airfields, we've seen them start to put up some nets as well. Like, have you ever seen the playgrounds in the United States where they've got that kind of like giant blue tarp over it to protect it from the sun?
Yes.
Kind of like that, but with nets over aircraft hangars and aircraft that are parked outside on Russian airfields. I can't tell yet if that's a temporary solution or something long term, but it's doing the trick, and it's better than nothing. And it's cheap, man. Again, fishing nets.
Yeah, that is very cheap. Did you see that Marco Rubio said that since January, Russia's had 100,000 soldiers killed? Not wounded, killed.
I did see that. That seems really high.
Do you think the number's wrong?
I think a lot of the casualty figures we've had from this war have been wrong.
Interesting.
I think generally speaking, they're overestimated. Just by different magnitudes, but 100,000, wow, so that's, you're talking 6 months. So what does that come out to? 15,000 a month?
About.
I don't know, man. I don't know. There's some areas where there's a couple ways to look at it. I mean, the drones, Ukrainian drones, are striking deeper and deeper inside of Russian territory. So it's not just guys, go back to World War I. It's not like we're just looking at casualties in no man's land or on the front. The where guys are exposed to drone strikes is going further and further back. 24/7, Ukraine is running strike operations to kill anything within about, let's call it 20 to 40 kilometers from the line of contact. Like all day, just killing. But 100,000 in 6 months seems really high. Especially because we haven't seen any large-scale Russian assaults in that time, which is when they're most vulnerable. They're still conducting like squad-size attacks with 10 to maybe 20 people at most.
So ISIS, that is the Center for Strategic and International Studies, says that 250,000 have been killed on Russia's side in total. The UK has over 250,000 killed, and that is for Russian forces. So that would be adding 100,000 onto that would be crazy.
Yeah, and you haven't seen, if you look at the recent battles that are playing out around Pokrovsk in the south and kind of Sumy up north, like, there are definitely kinetic engagements. There are numerous people dying every single day, but it's not like Bakhmut, where you remember every single day the Russians were sending 40 to 200 to 400 soldiers, Wagner group largely, moving through that, trying to just get another 10 meters. That's not happening at that scale really anywhere along the front right now. So to get 100,000 in 6 months, that feels high. But I don't know. You would think that Secretary Rubio has access to better information than you and I. I just, based off the videos and the footage and what we're seeing on the front, that number seems a little too optimistic.
Without a doubt. It's interesting because you're right, no offensives, nothing like that. Just maybe, is it disease? I mean, I know it's not 1914, but 250,000 dead. That is more than half of the U.S.'s World War II death count.
I was talking to a guy yesterday, international volunteer in one of Ukraine's more elite units, and we're going to work on a fundraiser here in a bit. And he asked, we were talking about interviews, lining up some interviews with some of their guys to talk about different aspects that maybe don't get a lot of attention. And one of the things he wanted to talk about was the capabilities of the Russian military. He said it's overlooked too much. You see these crazy numbers of losses, and like, yes, they care at baseline, they care less about the lives of their soldiers than the West, and it's not close. Like, they'll send guys forward on a motorcycle assault to try to identify where Ukrainian positions are. Like, they do not expect them to survive. It is, and we don't do that right now in the U.S. military. We haven't fought a war like this in a long time. But I mean, even in Vietnam, when there was movement to contact, the goal was not. It wasn't like send those guys out there and we'll expect that they die. It's that they might be in more danger. But Russia's just expecting some of these lower level fighters to just get killed. But this guy brought up the point. He said that gets a lot of attention, but it doesn't make up the majority of the fight. A lot of times they have much more experienced soldiers, and the minute they find a gap, they're exploiting it with veterans, with guys that are well equipped. They've got a lot of ammunition, they've got a lot of equipment, and we're always really quick to assume that it's just these meat waves of infantry moving across open terrain with no fire support, and they've got 2 weeks of training and half a magazine. He said, yeah, that happens, and the fact that it happens at all is shocking because we're not used to it, but the majority of the fights are with guys that they know what they're doing, and they're very, very lethal.
Interesting. That is interesting. The post-war dynamics will be quite interesting. I don't think we're anywhere close to it. But the post-war dynamics will be that Ukraine has not only the largest military in all of Europe, but maybe one of the largest ones in the world. They also have the most experienced soldiers in all the West. And Russia will have the same as well. And that creates a relatively interesting scenario, right? I mean, you could look, if this war ends before the invasion of Taiwan, you're looking at Ukrainians being sent to Taiwan to assist Taiwanese forces as advisors, right, on drone warfare and stuff like that. That's really quite crazy. And I mean, we're already seeing that the U.S. military and the European militaries, they are taking tips from the Ukrainians. I mean, it's a fascinating aspect of what's happening there.
Yeah. There's going to be a lot of people in Ukraine when time permits and the situation permits that are going to be in high demand from militaries around the world. And another little selfish piece here from the United States. I hope that we continue to stay on the right side of history here, because when the war ends, whenever it does, we're going to want to tap into that knowledge base. And it's not just their know-how and their tactics. It's how they're developing these systems and what munitions for what types of missions. And that would be really, really good information to have. And the closer we stay with Ukraine, even if it ends up just being humanitarian aid or only defensive weapons, the more likely we are going to be able to benefit from those lessons learned at the end of this conflict.
Without a doubt. What do you make of, Ryan Macbeth is always warning about this, I'm seeing more people saying it, that Russia can't end the war because if they do, you have all these jobless, PTSD, wounded young men who have guns now and combat experience. They'll overthrow Putin. I think that's kind of an optimistic assessment, but what do you make of that?
It's not drastically different than really any war throughout history. I mean, you can go back to any conflict and probably say the same thing. You got all these young men that are prone to violence now, and they've seen some of the worst things humanity can provide, and they've got the training, and now they're going back home, and probably half of them are not happy with how things went. So I don't think that's really anything new. Maybe we haven't seen it in a little while. I did see something recently from Dara Massacat, a Russia analyst, talking about how Russia's actually made some significant improvements in their veteran care and transition. That a couple years ago, that was the thing, was all of these, and they've had issues. Russia's had issues, especially Wagner Group. Some of these convicts come out and they get their release and they go home and they kill somebody, right? And those stories bubble up very quickly because it's one of those like, well, yeah, what did you think was going to happen? But Dara was saying that Russia's actually further ahead with some of their reintegration programs, finding jobs for veterans when they come home than most people expected at this point. So, I mean, it's a challenge, no doubt, but I don't know that Russia would be in any worse situation than, say, Ukraine, right? Or any other country. I mean, definitely different national dynamics, no doubt, but either way, you're going to have a lot of young men, mostly, that have experienced a lot of violence coming home in mass, needing jobs very quickly.
Very true. And speaking of young men having nothing else to do but fight a war, the Houthis. They sank 2 ships. Transition. Yes. I mean, right? I mean, what else are they doing? They're shooting missiles at ships. Not exactly GDP producing work right there. So what happened here with the Houthis this week?
They sunk 2 commercial vessels, and it was the first one was the Magic Seas, and it appears that I believe both were Greek flagged or Greek owned. The Magic Seas, the crew was able to get off the ship. Nobody was killed or injured. I'm not entirely sure if they were captured or picked up by other ships in the area. The Eternity Sea, the very next day, was hit by drones and missiles, Houthi drones and missiles, and it sounds like at least 4 of the crew members were killed, and maybe more, and others are still missing. The reason this is notable is the Houthis had not done this since December of 2024. They have not attacked a commercial vessel in 7 months. And I think we forget that because in the middle of that time period, roughly, February to May, the U.S. really ramped up operations against the Houthis. We were carrying out 1 or more series of airstrikes against them every single day, and they were firing drones and missiles at U.S. warships in the region. There's been a handful of Israeli strikes in that time period, notably one as the United States announced that we were randomly in a ceasefire with the Houthis. So it's not really died down, but the Houthis within the last 72 hours have decided enough's enough. We're going to start going after commercial ships again. And from their perspective, they're saying what changed was that ships started violating this ban on travel to or from Israeli ports. I don't know. There's got to be more to it, to be frank, because ships have always been going to and from Israeli ports. Like, that's not really anything new.
I was going to say, I don't think they ever stopped.
Yeah, and traffic never came to a complete stop through the Bab el-Mandeb Strait off the coast of Yemen. It's decreased. It is still decreased, but it never came to a complete halt. So it's not like these are the first 2 ships in 7 months to try to move through. So we're going to see another drop in shipping, no doubt. That was already at about 40% off its normal traffic. And we'll see. It doesn't sound like, as of now, the United States is planning on doing anything. Technically, this is not in violation of the ceasefire, the bilateral ceasefire between the Houthis and the U.S. But yeah, I mean, it's certainly going to impact the trade routes, no doubt.
It's interesting that, no one seems to want to do anything about them, right? Even the United States gave up. They're just like, whatever. They're kind of just like Tusken Raiders in that sense. They just kind of they're out there. No one can do anything about it. Like the Tusken Raiders from Star Wars, Yeah.
Yeah.
And no one seems to want to do anything about them at all. So I don't really know how you fix it. They're definitely. I keep seeing people say that the Houthis are the only ones rendering effective aid to the people in Gaza, at least effective military aid. And the word effective there is doing a lot of heavy lifting because they're not really doing anything. They fire 1 missile every few days. It doesn't do anything. And then they're sinking Greek ships. What did the Greeks ever do to the Houthis?
Yeah, I think one of the challenges with the Houthis is it's a very difficult situation to overcome. The Houthis have shown in the last few years that when we talk about shutting down a waterway, it's historically been patrolled with military vessels and or mines, naval mines. And the Houthis aren't doing either one of those. They've just got some cheap drones within range of that strait, and we see it right now. It's significantly impacted shipping. And the Houthis, sinking ships, sends a message, but they don't even have to do that. They just have to launch a drone every so often in the general vicinity of a commercial vessel. These ships are defenseless. So, doesn't matter. You fly a drone, buzz one of these decks, that word is going to spread, and you're going to have a handful of carriers that say, cool, we're not messing with it, we're not risking it. And then a bunch of insurance providers say, we're not going to underwrite any ships moving through that area. It's just not worth it. So how do you resolve that? And we're not able to resolve that with airstrikes. I think we figured that out. The U.S. metric I was optimistic and then critical when this happened. We needed to be doing more to try to stop this threat because, to your point, it's kind of this group that they found this new tool, this terrorism, and they're seeing that it works. And I don't think that's a good thing for the world when a terrorist organization can find out, if we just tax civilians here, nobody can do anything to stop us. So I don't like that lesson being learned. So I did like when the Trump administration picked up strikes and started going more preemptively against some of these Houthi locations, hitting some of their storage sites, their C2, all of that the Biden administration largely was not going after. But then all of a sudden we just said, great job, everyone, we're done. And the threat was not gone, as we can see today. The Houthis just made an agreement, which when you step back big picture, yes, their flag says death to America, death to Israel, curse be upon the Jews. So it's not like they like the United States, but the only reason they started shooting at U.S. vessels in the first place is because we started intercepting their munitions that they were firing at other vessels, and then we started taking out some of their drones and missiles that as they got ready to launch. So it became kind of a no-brainer that they would start attacking U.S. ships to try to push us out of the region. Now, I'm not trying to say the Houthis are good or on the U.S. side or anything like that, but a ceasefire with the United States for them right now, like, it's a no-brainer. Great. We'll keep doing everything else we were doing, and we just don't have to deal with the U.S. attacking us. Yeah, it's not resolved, man. Not by a long shot. And I think to actually get some sort of resolution there is incredibly messy and probably requires some sort of change to the dynamics on the ground.
You know, the only country that seems to actually have an incentive to end what's happening here is Egypt, because Egypt takes a considerable amount of their governmental revenue, their tax revenue, is through transit through the Suez Canal. And you would think, they've lost tons the past 2 years. You would think they would do something, but they're doing nothing. I don't know what's going on there. I was always told Egypt was this great, strong military that would bring Israel to their knees, which, famously they never did. But they were going to bomb that dam in Uganda, too, and they didn't do that. Not Uganda, Ethiopia, and they didn't do that either. So I don't know what's happening here with Egypt. They seem DOA, dead on arrival, or maybe, a walking zombie of a nation. Because if it was my nation and it was my canal, I would have done something by now. I mean, they have modern aircraft, too. So they have American arms. I don't know what's stopping them. You also have the Saudis, who don't really seem interested in doing anything about it either.
There's a bigger issue here, too, where folks will immediately say, and we might get this in the comments, of, I know how to solve it, a ceasefire in Gaza. As soon as Israel withdraws from Gaza and allows in humanitarian aid, like the Houthis are saying every single time they carry out an attack, that'll do it. Problem solved. But that doesn't solve the problem. It might stop the attacks for now, but again, the bigger issue, I think, here, and maybe the cat's out of the bag, there's nothing to be done, but the bigger issue here is the Houthis found out that they have a very significant lever they can pull, and they can pull that lever via terrorism, targeting civilians on civilian vessels. So, let's imagine that there is a ceasefire in Gaza tomorrow, and the Houthis say, great, we're done. The next time they want to do something, or they want some attention, it's going to be a civilian vessel that catches a drone in the Red Sea. That issue is not resolved.
I would agree. Do you think this is going to follow the route of the Barbary Wars?
Walk me through that.
So the Barbary Wars, in many ways, I guess, was America's first war on terror. And also the UK was involved, and Sweden and France. But in North Africa, in particular Morocco and by Gibraltar, you had these Barbary pirates in what is also modern-day Tunisia, and they would abduct ships, they would sink ships, they would steal their goods, they would capture sailors, and their whole thing was, you either pay us or you're not allowed to come in to the Mediterranean. And so they would just harass everyone. And the British paid. There's all right, here's money, go away. And then they, eventually paid a little bit more to harass the French and the American ships a bit more. And so then, I know, I'm sure you know the Marines theme song, right? From the Shores of Tripoli. Yeah, that is them. The Marines invaded Tripoli, and they invaded North Africa in 1812, or not 1812, 1805. And they put an end to these Barbary pirates, for a little bit, because there were two of them, so they didn't actually completely get it done, but they ended up fighting them into submission, and I believe also maybe paying them to leave them alone as well. But that happened, and I think I don't know, do you think it follows that and that eventually the Houthis are going to anger someone who will do something about it? Although the one country that will do something about it has given up already. So, I mean, they already have agreements with China and Russia. Who's next? I mean, is it going to take what's the... I guess I already answered my own question. No one's going to do anything about it.
At this point, I don't think anybody is.
Yeah.
And again, I think it opens up. So what's the lesson learned? If other groups around the world want to do this, it's that there's not a lot of repercussions for attacking commercial vessels and sending a signal that way. And you could say, well, the Houthis were on the receiving end of pretty significant American bombardment, but they seem to have come out of that just fine. There's still no indication. I've not seen any confirmation or claims, I should note, of senior Houthi officials that were killed by U.S. strikes. The U.S. at times talked about some folks high up in their leadership. I'm not seeing that anywhere. I didn't see the U.S. present a name. They said, like, the head of their missile command or something like that, right? But I never saw a name released by the U.S. or Israel, who Israel famously will release, like, last week's photo of the IRGC general that they somehow got off of his phone before they assassinated him. So Israel doesn't have the name, the U.S. doesn't have the names, and Houthi media, Yemen media, has not shown any indications that any senior officers have died. And there are any celebrations or mourning or anything. So it's hard for me to look at the U.S. campaign against the Houthis and say that was effective.
I fully agree. And I mean, they sank the USS Eisenhower, Truman, how many times? 4 or 5 times?
A lot of times.
I mean,
including after
they
it
kept
wasn't even
sinking
there
our
anymore.
aircraft carrier.
Crazy.
Yeah. Right. So it seems like that was a draw, I think we can say. That conflict draw. No winner on either side. Kind of pointless. But you know what wasn't a draw?
Well, hold on. No, I'm going to push on that. I think we lost that. I think we lost that. The Houthis are doing the same thing they were doing. There's no clear indication anybody was really lost. And I think we sent a signal that we're not interested in kind of going for the long-term solution. It's more short-term wins. I think it kind of tipped President Trump's hand in a way that he wants to be able to declare these victories and not risk getting too far involved. Mm-hmm. And I would imagine that Iran is reading into that. I would imagine that China is reading into that. And I would imagine that Russia is reading into that. Whether it's the correct assumption or not, the out of the blue, we have a ceasefire and not even telling our allies who at the time were in the air conducting airstrikes against the Houthis, I think we came out on the wrong end of that engagement.
I agree. Okay, I'll accept we lost. I think what's interesting is that when you compare it to like the Somali pirate crisis, there was a whole like international coalition, mostly led by the United States, but people dedicated to putting a stop to this, and no one seemed interested in doing that this time around. No one really seemed to care, and I wonder if that will change in a few years. I imagine not. But I mean, I think the solution now is for at least to train up the Yemen army, to do something about these Houthis. So, because otherwise, they can't keep the Strait down forever, right?
I don't know.
Like,
one drone
something's got to
give.
give.
Yeah.
Something's got to give, and I don't know. We'll see. But speaking of something's got to give, Iran. What's going on there? What happened?
Yeah. Oh man. All right. You're feeding me these ones that I'm not happy about, and I feel like there's not a lot of positive news here as of late. We spent a lot of time, a lot of media capital, if that's the right way to put it, attention capital, on whether or not these facilities were effectively were obliterated, I think is the right term. And under the radar, because what happened then was we celebrated. We did it. Great job, everyone. What a mission. Everybody can go home. Meanwhile, there is still an Iranian nuclear program that we're not addressing. And it feels like that's just completely fallen off the table. We're still getting satellite imagery out of these sites that looks like Iran is in the process of trying to like open up some of the entrances. So it's not even clear they've been able to get underground quite yet. But, we don't exactly know where their enriched uranium is. They still have a fair number of scientists, albeit not the top nuclear scientists. They have still said they have a desire to continue enriching uranium, and they have said they're going to continue developing their missile program. So, that seems like a problem right now. Now, I'm not saying that means that we need to launch another wave of airstrikes or it needs to be 2 weeks 2-week-long campaign or put boots on the ground. But we are, because usually the alternative is you say, how about talks? There's been no talk about talks. Like Iran just a couple days ago were pushed on this, and they said, we haven't heard anything about it. There's nothing in the plans. So, like, what is the plan? If we're not going to look, I do think it should be, I think we should be pushing for some sort of negotiated settlement now. I think the United States and Israel had the upper hand at the negotiating table, and we should leverage that. But in the last few weeks, since the U.S. dropped those bombs, we have largely been focused on celebrating a victory rather than actually moving towards some sort of end state.
I mean, sure. I mean, that might be what you think, but I was told it was completely destroyed, so that's what I believe.
You're not helping. You're not helping. That doesn't help.
No, I know. And maybe Steve Witkoff's on vacation, so they can't have talks or something. But it is weird that, like, nothing, they didn't completely destroy anything. The program still exists. There are no talks. And that's kind of where we leave it. And what did the Pentagon say? They said we only pushed the program back 1 to 2 years.
I saw that again repeated by Israel today. Some Israeli officials still off the record, unnamed stuff, but they said 2 years. So again, like, let's assume every piece of nuclear equipment was completely destroyed. Then we still have to deal with their missile program, right? There still needs to be questions about that. There still need to be questions about the scientists and the desire to continue enriching uranium. Like, that has not been addressed at all. So,
right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, have you considered that the president said it's been handled?
He's very sternly, thank you for your attention to this matter. Yeah.
Yes, very sternly telling us all it's been handled. I don't know. It's kind of puzzling to me that we just kind of left it. I thought there would be more. But that is, I think we have an Amazon Prime foreign policy / government now, where 2 days, 2-day shipping, and that's
Wrap
done.
it up.
Yep, you place
tell
the
you
order,
not
and
done.
it's over.
Mossad, not done. There's still explosions in Tehran about every other day now, and every time Iran comes out and they're like, that was a gas leak. It's like, it's crazy. Gas leaks in, like, the housing sector for IRGC senior officials.
The Iranian regime is so puzzling to me because they don't do anything. They're in many ways kind of like, with all respect to our buddy, genuine friend of the pod, Emmanuel Macron. They talk like him and they don't do anything like him. I don't understand what their whole deal is. They're always trying to, brush everything under the rug, and we defeated everyone. Iran doesn't even have like closed media like China and Russia. Like, you can't even like lie to the people. Does everyone just like, oh yeah, this regime sucks, they're not doing anything? I can't wrap my mind around.
They've been rounding people up. They've been rounding people up in recent weeks. There's some panic about, because we saw just how deep the Israeli penetration was into the IRGC, that there's a bit of a panic right now of anybody with, it's a very, very broad net. So I think that's part of it right now as well, is you get a little too friendly with Western media on your home internet, might be a reason for a visit you don't want. So they're still in the middle of that issue too.
Interesting. Well, speaking of being too friendly with people on the internet, we have questions from our viewers.
Let's do it.
So, Preston, this question is, what is a reason for an American to support sending military aid to Ukraine from a moral and material perspective?
All right. So I would say from a moral perspective, because this is an ally of ours, we share a lot of similar values, and we have the ability to, just 2 days ago, Russia, not to tie it all to one issue, but 2 days ago, a Russian FPV drone operator, which means that they were piloting the drone, right? You're watching it crash into the target. They crashed it into a little playpen with a 1-year-old kid, killed the kid. That's awful. And the United States has the ability and the means to help put that to an end and show not just Russia, but the rest of the world, you can't just move into somebody's territory, start killing their citizens, and take it for your own. I think that's a rule of law thing. I think that's one of the kind of guarantees that has helped. There's been a lot of war since World War II, but not a lot of global war. And I think that one of the reasons we've been able to maintain that is that countries don't go over the top like Russia has. So I think there's a moral obligation, in a sense, to help Ukraine defend their own territory. The other one was material. Is that right?
Yes.
We hit on this
material perspective.
Yeah, just a little bit ago. I think there's a financial incentive here. We can develop the equipment. We can sell it into Ukraine. We can sell it to our partners in the region. We can show how effective American equipment is against Russian technology. So more countries around the world are going to want that. It's going to drive jobs here. It's going to drive investment in the United States. And then from a military perspective, we get to see how our equipment operates against Russian forces. So Russia is using a lot of Chinese technology as well. Ben and I were talking about the drone war just a few minutes ago. We are learning more just watching that play out day to day than we ever could have imagined, than anybody could have brainstormed on their own for years on end. Every single Patriot interceptor that's fired, we are able to download data from to understand the flight characteristics of Russia's most advanced missile systems. We're becoming a better military because Ukraine is using some of our weapon systems in modern combat. So I think from both a moral and a material perspective, it is in our best interest, short and long term, to continue providing some degree of military aid to Ukraine.
I agree. And I think from a moral perspective, this is what America's here for, right? Thomas Paine wrote, "The cause of America is in great measure the cause of all humanity." And I think he's right? I mean, Declaration of Independence doesn't specify just Americans. It doesn't say that liberty and justice are just for Americans. It says for everybody, for all human beings. This is what America's here for: is protect freedom. It's to ensure that people are protected. And I'm going to be real with you. What do we have this giant military for if we're not using it to help other people? If we're not using it to...
Yeah.
Right, yeah. Maybe. And that'll be our next question here. But it's puzzling to me. I mean, look, this is what we're here for. This is our whole purpose. We did it in World War II. We did it in the Civil War. We did it in Korea. We did it in Vietnam. We did it in Iraq and Afghanistan, Grenada, all of it. So this is what we do best.
I want to stress on that. There's a long ways between where we are right now and where our military is directly engaged with Russian forces, which I would like to avoid. I don't think that's a good next step by any stretch of the imagination. But there is a lot of gray between those two. To include something as simple as just ramping up production of equipment that we can sell into Europe or sell into Ukraine. Like, there's that. All the way to, maybe putting logistics troops or medical troops in the western part of the country or in Poland, able to receive some wounded casualties there. Like, there's a lot of things that can be done before you start seeing American forces charge into Crimea.
Without a shadow of a doubt, and if we don't act, then we will be having a marine invasion of Crimea. Now, this next question is, thoughts on the U.S. administration flip-flopping on the Epstein files after Elon said Trump was in them?
It's not something I've followed too awful closely, but it's been a weird ride because it seemed like clearly a lot of big names were involved in this, right? Like we've seen the pictures over the years, and like the dude just ran in very popular circles. So I don't know. It feels like in every direction there's a conspiracy here. But to me, it seems like it was handled poorly. If there was nothing to be seen here, I would just drag my feet indefinitely. Like, we're still working on it. To come out and say, like, it's wrapped up, everything's done, seems odd. It feels like there's something that we're not getting there. I just don't know which direction to take that conspiracy in.
So I'm of the viewpoint... So I think prior to this week, I've always been of the viewpoint that the only thing with Jeffrey Epstein is that, of course, you have Maxwell, his girlfriend or fiance. I don't think they ever got married. Of course, you had Maxwell, and really the only other person that was, two other people that were implicit or complicit in what's going on here were Prince Andrew and Trump. And I only say Trump because Trump's on record saying that Jeffrey Epstein's his best friend like 4 times, which is bizarre to me. And for the most part, I just thought, Jeffrey Epstein, he's a financier, he's a philanthropist. He was in New York high society, and him meeting with Bill Gates, him meeting with Bill Clinton, him meeting with, all these other people on there, does not necessarily mean that they are trafficking people. If anything, he's a philanthropist. He's donating money. So he meets with high-profile people, and then he claims, look, I'm associated with all these people who support my trafficking efforts. That was my viewpoint on this. And I did believe that he did kill himself. I think I still do. I think it's really overblown. And I think Epstein intentionally designed it to make it seem like he was sheltering all these people in their crimes, right, in a way to try to protect himself. That's what I think. Now, what happened this week is so crazy that I think I'm an idiot for not being a fan of the conspiracy, for thinking it's fake. Because, I'll put the clip here. Did you see the president when they asked Pam Bondi about the Epstein thing? He goes, it wasn't even like 12 hours. It was like 8 hours earlier. They're like, yeah, so nothing here is the Epstein, no high client list. They ask about Epstein, goes, are you still talking about Jeffrey Epstein? They've been talking about that guy for years. Let it go. He goes, that is unbelievable. And I thought, did he take a class on how to look as guilty as possible or something? What?
Just shines the light right back on, right? Like, wait a minute.
It was so crazy to me. I was like, good Lord. But yeah, so now I'm like a little. Now I wonder about my priors on Jeffrey Epstein. Now I wonder, maybe there is something there. And the craziest part is Kash Patel. Before Trump got in office, he's on Joe Rogan. He's on all these podcasts saying, when I get in there, we're going to release it. Pam Bondi kept saying, oh, this whole time, the list is on my desk. Dan Bongino said, oh, I have it. We're letting it loose. We're going to name all these people. Sure enough, here we are. Nothing. Remember when those influencers came out? We made fun of them on here. Those influencers that came out with the big binder. What do you think was in there? Just a bunch of crayons and pictures? Good God. I think they have. They've created a wildfire here, and maybe there is nothing there, but they've created a wildfire that I think people are pretty mad about. I've already seen what's it called? The Flagrant. What's the podcast of Andrew Schultz called?
I don't know.
Well, their whole thing is they are big Trump guys. They like Trump, and now they're against him because now they're saying he's covering up Epstein.
Flagrant, is that it?
Flagrant, yeah. Okay. And they're saying he's covering up Epstein. I thought, interesting. But speaking of covering things, actually, that doesn't work as a transition here. Here's the next question. Can you talk about the National Guard's involvement in Operation Excalibur in MacArthur Park in L.A. this week? Why does the military need to be involved in a raid on a park for fake IDs?
I just saw some footage of this. It looked like a very staged, saw a concept of the operation, a little sketch the military uses to plan things like this out. It just looked, I don't know, like it was more for the visual than anything else, is what it looked like to me. The term that came to mind was show of force. Like, just to show people that we're there, the government, is there. I don't know. I don't recall that anything actually happened from that. Like that there were any engagements with locals. They just kind of walked through the park, which, look, I've said it before. I think there's a lot of better uses for our military than having them on the ground in Los Angeles right now. A lot of better uses. But in this case, I don't know. They just, again, show of force is probably the best thing I can come up with.
Yeah, I guess the show of force, although I would argue the show of force wasn't really all that intimidating. There were like 10 of them on horseback and then another 100 walking very slowly in a park that was empty. So I don't really know what they were doing other than trying to be provocative. Leaked documents that were given to Ken Klippenstein, or Ken Klippenstein, I don't know what it is. But they show that the government wants to turn MacArthur Park into a forward operating base, into a military base for them, which is such a provocative idea that the National Guard keeps vetoing it, and ICE and DHS is like, no, we need to do this. And they're like, no. And then in those leaked documents, DHS and ICE are seen trying to coerce the National Guard into wearing masks, just like them. And the National Guard says, no, we're supposed to be members of the community here. We're not supposed to be wearing masks. We're not supposed to be hiding like you fools. And so for the most part, the National Guard has resisted the call to wear masks from DHS. We'll see if that holds. But yeah, this is a show of force. This is Stephen Miller trying to provoke conflict. He knows that he cannot get Americans to... Stephen Miller knows he cannot get Americans to... He can't intimidate them to be quiet, right? Americans just simply... We've never had anything like this. It's not in our brain to hold our tongues. And he's trying to... he knows he can't intimidate it, so he's trying to provoke a conflict, right? He's trying to get people to attack ICE, to attack the Guard, and they are. And what they're doing here is in Texas and California, they're shooting ICE agents or Customs and Border Patrol agents, and then you're seeing Stephen Miller go on Fox and complain about it, saying this is so inappropriate, we need to send even more military. So he's provoking a conflict and putting these people's lives in danger intentionally, so therefore he can escalate more on the American people and fulfill his dream of having, like, I don't know, 40 million Americans. Maybe that's too high. He just wants everyone to look like him. He wants everyone to be a bald-headed loser. So that is, kind of Stephen Adolf Eichmann Miller's plan here. And I do not envy. ICE should take off their masks, but their lives are being put at risk here by Stephen Miller, and they would be wise to de-escalate. But they would continue. I mean, did you see in L.A. they were raiding some kind of marijuana farm? Which it took me a second to remember, but marijuana is legal. When I saw a marijuana farm, I was like, oh, okay. No, apparently that's legal. I totally forgot. It's even legal in the state I live in. So yeah. I had completely forgotten about that. And they were raiding it, and a protester was shooting a pistol at them. And I don't think we got any hits, but he was shooting. He shot quite a few shots, and I thought, this is only going to happen more and more. Yeah. And the more force you show up with, the more you're going to be. And look, this is what the Second Amendment's for, all right? You're talking about deporting U.S. citizens. People are scared. They think you're going to take them to a second location. You're going to put them in CCOT. I don't know. I think Trump, Stephen Miller, ICE would be wise to de-escalate. That is not a threat. I'm not endorsing violence. It's certainly not. But am I being clear on what I mean here? I don't know.
Sometimes I'm very vague. But I guess what I'm just saying is that, like, usually you take the guns, then you send in the mass secret police, right? You don't do it in reverse. That's why you're getting what's happening now. Wasn't it there was an attack in Texas this week, right, against DHS? Yeah,
2 of them. There was a group of 10 that ambushed an officer. They were kind of dumb in the way they did it, though.
Good.
Yeah, right. They were lighting fireworks and spray painting the building, trying to get the cops to come out, and then they ambushed them with assault rifle fire. But then they were caught within minutes, too. They didn't have a getaway plan, and I don't know if they just thought they were gonna. The police were just gonna, like, oh, we're trapped in this building now.
Yeah.
No, they just got in a car, drove around, and arrested them. So I was like, this is
not for Hollywood.
Lucky for ICE, so far the people taking up arms against them have been very dumb. But I don't know if that'll be the case in the future. Let's hope for de-escalation. Let's hope Congress passes this bill to remove the masks, take the badges off, or put badges on, and I don't know, praying for de-escalation for our beautiful country, so we can continue flying this flag at full mast here. Because who knows? Anyways, any final thoughts, Preston? Any tips and tricks for viewers?
Tips and tricks?
Any tips and tricks?
No, we'll zoom out a little bit and try not to focus too much on the back and forth with some of this Ukraine stuff, especially because it changes by the day. But hopefully positive news in the next 72 hours.
I mean, you don't want to do 8 episodes next week called We're So Back, No We're Not.
Oh, shit, it's off. Okay, it's back.
We're So Back, Volume 7. Never mind, Volume 10.
Sounds about right.
Anyways. All right, guys, we'll see you all. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, follow us on Spotify and Apple. Give us 5 stars there as well. And we will see you next week for a very special episode.